So how do you go from being a perfectionist to having confidence and having consistent confidence, to believing in yourself, so that no matter what situation you go in, you're able to trust yourself. You're able to know, I can handle this, I can make plays, and you feel that deep sense of trust in your ability. How you do this is by developing something I call mental flexibility. Mental flexibility is important because this is what a healthy mind really is. A healthy mind is a flexible mind, just like a healthy body is a flexible body. If you had a flexible, maybe hamstring, then that means that that hamstring can move through a range of motion and it's not at risk of injury throughout that movement. But if you have a very rigid hamstring, then the second that you stretch that muscle out, it becomes vulnerable and it will break, it will tear, it will get injured. And so what you want to realize is that a flexible mind is very much a mind that is able to accept both sides of the equation. So this is a yin-yang is what I call it. There's actually a term for it that I always forget the name of. But you want to think of the idea of yin and yang. So basically it's like you have one color and the other. What this means is that you have to accept that the truth is a combination of opposites. You have to be able to have basically some of one thing and some of the other in order to have essentially the full truth. And this sounds kind of weird, sounds kind of hippie, spiritual, but this is the way the world works. Everything exists in a balance of good and bad, right? There's a yes and no. There is a hot and cold. There is a bright and dark, right? All of these things exist in order to create the other. The only reason light exists is because of darkness. The only reason that good exists is because of bad, right? So you need to have both, or like masculine and feminine is one of the big ones, like doing things, acting, and then there's being passive and accepting, right? And you need to have both of these in your life. You need to have both of whatever the thing is in order to be balanced and to be mentally flexible, because sometimes it's important to do something, sometimes it's important to not do something, right? When you're defending, sometimes it's right to attack, sometimes it's right to hold back. So that's the way I like to think of this concept, first of all. But I want to break this down in a way that's going to make a ton of sense. So here's what it looks like to have rigid thinking. So if you could visually see what a rigid mind looks like, this is what I would describe as a rigid mind. So you basically think of the world as either it's 100% a failure or 100% a success. This is the kind of typical mindset that players will get into. And the second you get into this is going to stop you from being able to trust yourself. And the reason you won't be able to trust yourself is because you are going to oftentimes feel like there is a major risk of like catastrophic failure, because anything that's not success is failure. Now, a perfectionist mindset will actually look at this in an even more rigid way and in an even more extreme way. So a rigid thinker is actually going to look at it this way. They will see basically everything on this line as failure except for one little sliver that is perfect. Right? So we color this in just to give you the kind of breakdown of how this works. Right? Right? So this is a really bad sketch, but it doesn't really matter. Right? So what you want to realize is that somebody who is a rigid thinker, somebody who is a perfectionist, when you get caught in this perfectionist mindset, this is what's happening, is you basically think there's this one little sliver of perfect, everything else is a failure. It's all failure out here. And once you start to think of the world that way, it becomes very hard to take confident action, because you think, well, look at all the danger. If you were going to throw a dart at a board and everything but the bullseye was a complete failure, it'd be very hard to throw the dart confidently, because there would be so much room for error. And you would be basically questioning, like, what are the odds I hit this? You can, no matter how much you try to have a positive mindset, believe in yourself, you're still going to see so much danger and risk that your body's going to tense up, and it's going to want to tend to go towards kind of freezing up, maybe like avoiding the situation. It's very hard to attack, right? Now, how do we get into a different way of seeing this? This is the key, and this is the really important breakdown that I want to do for you is to help you understand that this is the rigid way of seeing it. This is the perfectionist way generally, but perfectionist is like I just drew. Now, here is the way you want to think if you want to be a confident hockey player. You want to develop what I call flexible thinking. And flexible thinking is very different from rigid thinking. It's very, very different. The reason it's very different is because you see everything as a spectrum instead of seeing it as this is good, this is bad, this is success, this is failure. And instead you see everything as a spectrum of basically execution. You see that there is a worst, there is like a 0% quality in what you did, and there is a best case scenario, like highest quality of what you did. Why this is important? Well, think about it for a second. If you want to be successful as a player, if you always exist in this idea of everything is either like I did it perfectly or I did it like I completely failed or I completely succeeded and there's no in between, well then now it's very difficult to be able to judge your game from realizing, well, was that a pretty good play, but maybe I could have did a little bit of a better play? It's like, no, it was a failure. And then your brain shuts off. You see yourself as a bad player. It's typically what happens for players is they just slowly get more and more negative when they have a perfectionist mindset. Right? So if you think about what happens for a player, right, if this is basically their confidence over time, what happens for a perfectionist is they're like, I'm perfect, I know I can do this. And then slowly as they fail more and more and more, their confidence just slowly dips. And then, yes, they have a little success. But then it's just this all the time. And it's just this constant up and down headed towards not believing in yourself. And that doesn't work. So when you develop flexible thinking, what you realize is that in every scenario, you exist most of the time in your hockey career somewhere in the middle between the best possible play and the worst possible play. Most players exist, like most of their games and their plays, most plays they make, exist kind of in this range, in this kind of upper middle zone, where it's a pretty good play. There's probably a better play they could make. They could be more mechanically efficient. They could have made a bit of a smarter play. They could have done it faster. They could have done different timing. They could have moved it a little, like kind of been a bit more deceptive, whatever it was. Most of the game is played here. And so why this makes you confident is because when you realize you're always making a play and you exist somewhere in this range, what you realize is all you're ever really trying to do as a player is setting the intention of making a more ideal play and then having the intent of improving. So if you make a play here, the intent is let's just be better. If you make a play here, you're just like, let's just be better. How could I improve on that play? What could I have done to be better? And you start to develop that mindset like a Kobe Bryant, like a Michael Jordan, somebody who saw the game as this constant opportunity to adjust, to improve, to find the next level in their game, because they always saw it as, I made a play somewhere on this spectrum. I could have been better. When I took that last shot, I know that there was more I could do. There was more I could improve on. They didn't see it as there's some perfect way to take that final buzzer shot. And so they just wanted to take it so they could figure out, okay, what happened? What worked? What didn't? I want that next shot. I want the next shot. I want the next shot. Give me the puck. Or in the case of basketball, give me the ball, right? And in hockey, this is how you develop confidence, is by flexibly seeing the game. You want to attack the game, right? You want to have the ball. You want to have the puck. You want to be in control, because naturally that's going to allow you to start to figure out how you can improve, how you can move towards making a more ideal play, right? And so let me break this down in a little bit more detail and make you realize that here's what one of the key things that our brain is almost always doing is we're always doing like this risk reward kind of scenario in our brains. And so what happens for players is that they typically kind of see what they're doing as somewhere on this range, right? It's typically going to be like, okay, this play is high risk, a lot of danger, a lot of reward potentially there. But when you start to realize it's a flexible thing, you actually open up to this the concept that it's not just like this, right? And all of this is failure, and then everything on the other side, this is all reward. It's just realizing that there's more optimal plays, there's less optimal plays. Again, mentally flexible. So this is basically how the brain works, and I'll zoom out on this for a quick second. Hopefully my computer, there we go. There we go. So this is the way I like to break this down, just so you kind of understand how the brain really works, is that you want to think of this as basically what happens in hockey at any given moment. You have the intent, which is like your hockey IQ. You have the mental ability, the confidence and trust, the focus and flow, and then you physically execute, right? So the intention is in the mind, then you have the flow and the ability to trust yourself, and then the body does it. That's what's happening. And you can have better intent, so better decision making, so you can make a better decision, or you can execute better, right? Like you can physically move faster, more efficiently, more mechanically optimal, basically. And then that equals the quality of the play. So basically, we want to think that every play we're making, all we're doing is really sending an intent to the brain. And what happens is that if we don't allow ourselves to think flexibly, we don't have flexible thinking, right? So if we zoom back over to here, right? If we have very rigid thinking, then what will happen is that we become very rigid in the way that we approach the game. And when we start to think like this, what will happen is, if we zoom back over here, is we will get locked up. We will hesitate, and we will not allow the right intention to travel to the body, and we will not make the right play. But when we develop this more flexible way of thinking, fear starts to go away. We start to trust ourselves because we're not trying to be a perfectionist. We're trying to be the best. We're trying to be a bestinist. I have no idea what you could even call that. Come up with a word for it. But you're trying to make the best possible play, and understanding that you're not going to be perfect. You can try to be perfect, but you're not going to be. And this concept makes it seem like there is a perfect, and you are going to find it every single play. So this is how you start to realize, oh, okay. So all I really need to do is be flexible, trust myself, right? My subconscious mind trusts the intention that I set. It trusts the software that I've built in the subconscious mind that carries it out. It trusts my instincts. And then your body does it. And then you can evaluate after and say, was the intent good? Did I have a good intention? Was the execution good, or did I need to improve my mechanics or my physical ability? Right? And this is the key, is understanding that both of these things matter in terms of the quality of the play. And this is how you start to look at improving. Could I make a better decision? Could I make a better hockey IQ decision? Could I execute better physically and mechanically? That's the game you're playing. But it only can exist if the mind allows it to happen. If you fully trust your intent and accept that anything can happen, mistakes can happen, and confidence comes from being flexible in the way that you think. So adopt this flexible mindset, adopt this flexibility, see the game from this flexible way of, on a spectrum, living in this zone, looking to always improve and move towards the more ideal option. But don't get caught up in thinking, I have to be rigid, I have to be successful, or else I'm a failure. It's always a place where you can learn and be better. So I hope this helps. I wanted to send this to you just to really help you dial this in, build that confidence, and have this flexibility. And if you're going into playoffs, hope this helps. If you're struggling with being a perfectionist, I hope this helps. Because this is how you go from being a perfectionist to being completely confident in yourself. So I'll talk to you soon, and I hope you have a great day.